My name is Thomas Grady, and I teach high school English in a mid-sized Maine city where everyone knows everyone else's business. At 39, I've learned that the most dangerous words in marriage aren't, "I want a divorce." They're, "Let's get a joint account, honey." My wife Elise suggested it 3 years ago with that sweet smile she reserves for getting her way. "It'll be so much easier, Tom. Just put your teacher's salary in there, and I'll handle all the bills." What she didn't mention was that her hospital HR manager paycheck would stay safely tucked away in her personal account, like a squirrel hoarding nuts for winter. I called it marital communism. What's mine is ours. What's hers is hers. Elise didn't find that joke amusing. The warning signs started 6 months ago. Late nights at the hospital became routine. "Emergency meetings," she'd say, checking her phone with the intensity of a day trader watching stocks crash. Her best friend Tasha, a real estate agent with a mouth bigger than her commission checks, started giving me these knowing looks at neighborhood gatherings. "Working hard at the hospital, isn't she?" Tasha would say with a smirk that could curdle milk. My sister Molly, who works as a nurse at the same hospital, started dropping hints like breadcrumbs. "You know, Tom, Elise has been spending a lot of time in the ER lately. Weird, since HR is on the 3rd floor." The pieces clicked into place last Tuesday. I was looking for gum in Elise's purse, with permission, mind you, when I found a conference badge clipped to a hotel key card. The badge read, "Dr. Ryan Dorsey, Emergency Medicine." The key card was from the Marriott downtown. Dr. Ryan Dorsey, 41 years old, divorced twice, with a reputation around the hospital that would make a sailor blush. Molly had mentioned him before, tall, charming, and about as faithful as a weather vane in a tornado. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table grading papers while Elise bustled around, humming. Actually humming. She hadn't hummed in our house for 2 years. "How was the conference, honey?" I asked, not looking up from a particularly brutal essay about Macbeth. "What conference?" She froze mid-hum. "The medical conference. I saw the badge in your purse." "Oh, that. Just a boring HR thing. Nothing interesting." She resumed humming, but the tune was off-key now. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I nodded and circled another grammar mistake. Must have been really boring to need a hotel room. The humming stopped entirely. That night, after Elise fell asleep, I checked our joint account online. The balance made my stomach drop faster than a student's grade after missing 3 assignments. $57,000, our entire savings, plus my last 6 paychecks, had been transferred out over the past 2 months. Small amounts at first, then larger chunks, all moved to an account I didn't recognize. I sat there in the blue glow of my laptop screen, listening to my wife's peaceful breathing from the bedroom. She was planning something that required liquidating our joint finances while keeping her own money safely locked away. The next morning I made coffee and watched Elise get ready for work. She moved with purpose now, checking her phone every 30 seconds like she was coordinating a military operation. "Tom, I might be late tonight. Big project at work." "Another emergency meeting?" Something like that. She kissed my cheek, a quick, guilty peck that felt like a judge's gavel. After she left, I called in sick and drove to the hospital. I parked across the street with a clear view of the employee parking lot and waited. At 11:47 a.m., Elise's silver Honda pulled in. At 11:52 a.m., a black Tesla parked 3 spots away. Dr. Ryan Dorsey stepped out, straightened his tie, and walked toward the employee entrance. At 12:15 p.m., they both emerged from a side door I'd never noticed before. They walked to his Tesla, and she got in the passenger seat. They drove off together, heading toward downtown. I followed at a distance, feeling like a character in one of those detective novels my students pretend to read. They parked at the Marriott, the same hotel from the keycard. They walked in together, her hand briefly touching his arm. I sat in my car for 2 hours, watching the hotel entrance and thinking about joint accounts, emergency meetings, and wives who hum while planning betrayals. When I got home that afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I opened a new bank account in my name only. Then, I transferred exactly $1 from our joint account, just to test the waters. That evening, Elise came home at 9:30 p.m. with takeout Chinese food and stories about hospital budget meetings that ran long. "How was your day off?" she asked, unpacking lo mein with theatrical casualness. "Productive," I said. "I learned some interesting things about joint accounts." She paused, chopsticks halfway to her mouth. "Oh? Yeah. Did you know that if someone empties a joint account without telling their spouse, it's considered financial infidelity?" That's interesting, Tom. Why are you thinking about that?" I shrugged and took a bite of sweet and sour pork. "Just something I read online. Apparently it happens more often than you'd think, usually right before someone files for divorce." Elise's face went pale, but she managed a laugh. "Well, good thing we trust each other, right?" "Right," I agreed. "Trust is everything in a marriage." That night, I lay awake, planning my next move. If Elise wanted to play games with joint accounts, I'd show her how the game was really played. After all, I'd been teaching teenagers about consequences for 15 years. Time to give my wife a lesson she'd never forget. The next morning, I put on my best performance as the oblivious husband. I made Elise coffee, kissed her goodbye, and wished her luck with her big project. She seemed relieved by my apparent cluelessness. At school, I taught my classes with unusual enthusiasm. My students probably thought I'd finally lost it when I spent 20 minutes explaining how Iago manipulates Othello through careful planning and patience. Revenge, I told my AP literature class, is a dish best served with meticulous preparation. During lunch, I called Adam, a former student who now worked in the hospital's IT department. Adam had been one of those quiet, brilliant kids who could hack into the school's system to change his lunch account balance. I'd caught him once, but helped him channel those skills into legitimate tech work instead of turning him in. "Mr. Grady? Wow, it's been like 2 years. How are you?" "I'm good, Adam. Listen, I need a favor. Nothing illegal, just some information." "Sure, what do you need?" "I'm trying to surprise my wife for our anniversary. She works at the hospital, Elise Grady in HR. I want to know her schedule so I can plan something special." It wasn't entirely a lie. I was definitely planning something special. "Oh yeah, I know Mrs. Grady, nice lady. Let me check the system." "Okay. Her keycard shows some interesting patterns. She's been accessing the ER level a lot lately, usually around lunchtime. That's weird since HR is on 3. Anything else unusual?" "Well, her parking records show she's been leaving the lot during lunch breaks pretty regularly. Want me to check the security footage from the parking garage?" "That would be great, Adam. Just email me anything interesting." After school, I drove to my sister Molly's apartment. She lived 10 minutes from the hospital in a complex that had seen better decades. Molly was waiting with coffee and the kind of gossip that only comes from working with the same people for 8 years. "Tom, I've been wanting to talk to you about this, but I wasn't sure how to bring it up." "Just say it straight, Molly." Elise and Dr. Dorsey have been the talk of the nurses' station for weeks. They're not exactly subtle about their lunch meetings. Last Thursday, Jenny from Pediatrics saw them in his office with the door locked and the blinds closed. My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice level. "What else?" "Dorsey's been bragging to the other doctors about his HR benefits. He actually used those words. And Tasha, Elise's friend, she was in the hospital cafeteria last week telling anyone who'd listen about Elise's new stress relief program." "Tasha knows?" "Honey, everyone knows except you, and probably Dorsey's wife, but she's been ignoring his affairs for years." I spent an hour with Molly, gathering intelligence like a general preparing for war. By the time I left, I had a clear picture of my wife's betrayal and the hospital's gossip network. That evening, Adam emailed me security footage from the parking garage. The timestamps told the whole story. Elise and Dorsey leaving together 3 times a week for the past month, always returning separately about 2 hours later. I saved everything to a flash drive and hid it in my desk drawer at school. The next morning, I made a decision. I woke up at 3 a.m. and quietly went to my laptop. I logged into our joint account and initiated a complete transfer of the remaining funds, about $12,000, to my new personal account. Then I changed the password and removed Elise as an authorized user. Before closing the laptop, I left a note on the kitchen counter. One-way withdrawals have consequences. We need to talk. Tom. I went back to bed and pretended to sleep until my alarm went off. Elise was already up, getting ready for another day of meetings. "Morning, honey," I said, stretching dramatically. "Sleep well?" "Fine. You?" "Like a baby." "Hey, I left you a note on the counter. Just some thoughts about our finances." She nodded absently, checking her phone. I watched her walk to the kitchen and heard the sharp intake of breath when she read the note. "Tom?" Her voice was carefully controlled. "What does this note mean?" "Just what it says. I think we should discuss our financial situation." "What financial situation?" I joined her in the kitchen, pouring coffee with deliberate slowness. "Well, for starters, the fact that you've moved $57,000 out of our joint account over the past 2 months. Her face went white. I can explain that. I'm sure you can. Just like you can explain why you need hotel rooms for HR conferences and why your key card shows you spending so much time in the ER. How do you know about my key card? Lucky guess. She stared at me for a long moment, probably calculating how much trouble she was in. Tom, this isn't what you think. Really? Because I think my wife is having an affair with Dr. Ryan Dorsey and systematically emptying our bank accounts to fund her exit strategy. Am I wrong? The coffee mug slipped from her hands and shattered on the kitchen floor. We both stared at the brown puddle spreading across the tiles. I need to go to work, she whispered. Good idea. Maybe you can have an emergency meeting about it? After she left, I cleaned up the broken mug and called in sick again. I had work to do, and it wasn't the kind they paid me for at school. I drove to the hospital and parked in the visitor lot with a clear view of the employee entrance. At 11:45 a.m., right on schedule, Elise and Dorsey met at his Tesla. But this time, instead of driving away together, they stood by the car talking animatedly. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in their body language. Elise was gesturing frantically. Dorsey kept looking around like he expected someone to be watching. Which, of course, someone was. After 10 minutes, they got in the car and drove toward downtown. I followed them to the Marriott, but this time I parked closer and waited in the lobby. They emerged from the elevator 45 minutes later, both looking stressed. Dorsey's tie was crooked, and Elise's hair was mussed. But their faces weren't flushed with passion. They looked like people who'd been having a very serious, very unpleasant conversation. As they walked past me toward the exit, I heard Dorsey say, "Need to accelerate the timeline. He knows more than we thought." Elise replied, "Not ready yet. We need more evidence." I let them leave, then sat in the lobby for another 20 minutes, thinking about timelines and evidence. Whatever they were planning, my little note had forced them to speed up their schedule. That was fine with me. I'd always been better at pop quizzes than long-term projects anyway. That evening, Elise came home with flowers and apologies. "Tom, I'm sorry about this morning. I know things have been strange lately and I want to explain everything." "I'm listening." "The money transfers? I was trying to surprise you. I've been working with a financial planner to invest our savings. Dr. Dorsey was helping me understand the medical investment opportunities. It was a good story, not great, but good enough for someone who hadn't been doing homework." "That's thoughtful," I said. "What's the name of this financial planner?" Johnson. Mr. Johnson. "First name?" "Robert." Robert Johnson. I nodded seriously. And the hotel meetings? He has an office there, in the business center. Another good touch. She'd clearly been preparing this explanation. Well, I'd love to meet this Robert Johnson and hear about these investment opportunities. Oh, he's very busy. Hard to get appointments. I'm sure, but since it's my money too, I think I should be involved in the decisions. She agreed, of course. What else could she do? That night, I lay in bed listening to Elise's restless tossing and turning. She was probably texting Dorsey under the covers, trying to figure out their next move. I smiled in the darkness. Let them plan. I had plans of my own, and mine had the advantage of being based on truth instead of lies. Tomorrow was Friday. The hospital's monthly charity gala was this weekend, a perfect opportunity for some public education about joint accounts and their consequences. Friday morning brought unseasonably warm weather and my wife's first attempt at damage control. Elise woke up early and made my favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup. She even squeezed fresh orange juice. You're in a good mood, I observed, cutting into the perfectly golden stack. I just want things to be normal between us again. She sat across from me with her own plate, but I noticed she wasn't eating. About tomorrow night's gala. What about it? Maybe we should skip it this year. I'm feeling a bit under the weather. The hospital's annual charity gala was the social event of the year for medical staff and their families. Elise had been looking forward to it for months, buying a new dress and getting her hair done. Her sudden reluctance told me everything I needed to know. Nonsense, I said, adding more syrup to my pancakes. You've been working so hard lately. You deserve a night out. Really, Tom, I think I'm coming down with something. Fresh air will do you good. Besides, I'm looking forward to meeting more of your colleagues. The look of panic that flashed across her face was worth the price of admission. After breakfast, I drove to school and taught my classes with renewed energy. During my planning period, I called Adam. Mr. Grady, I was hoping you'd call. I found something interesting in the security footage. What kind of interesting? Well, you know how you wanted to surprise your wife? I think someone might be planning to surprise you first. Dr. Dorsey and your wife have been having some pretty intense conversations in the parking garage. Yesterday, they looked really upset about something. Can you see what they were talking about? No audio, but their body language was aggressive. And here's the weird part. Dr. Dorsey kept pointing toward the hospital like he was talking about someone inside. Anything else? Yeah, this might sound crazy, but I think they were planning something for tomorrow night's gala. I saw them looking at the event planning documents on Dr. Dorsey's computer. Want me to check what they were looking at? That would be helpful, Adam. And one more favor. Can you get me access to the gala's audio-visual system? I'm thinking about putting together a little tribute for my wife. Sure thing, Mr. Grady. I'll send you the technical details. That afternoon, I visited Molly at the hospital. She was just finishing her shift, looking tired, but eager to share the latest gossip. Tom, you need to know something. Elise has been asking questions about you around the hospital. What kind of questions? Weird ones, like whether anyone's seen you acting strangely lately, or if you've been violent or aggressive. She even asked Dr. Martinez in psychiatry about signs of mental instability in men your age. My stomach tightened. She's building a case. That's what I thought too. And there's more. Dorsey's been telling people that you've been threatening him. Says you've been calling his office and leaving angry messages. I've never called his office. I know that, and you know that, but other people don't. Tom, I think they're trying to make you look unstable so they can claim you're dangerous. I thanked Molly and drove home, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Elise and Dorsey weren't just having an affair. They were orchestrating my downfall. The money transfers, the fake investment story, the questions about my mental state. It was all preparation for something bigger. That evening, Elise tried one more time to avoid the gala. Tom, I really don't feel well. Maybe you should go without me. Absolutely not. We're going together as a couple. united front and all that. She spent an hour getting ready, applying makeup with the precision of someone preparing for battle. The new dress was elegant, black silk with a plunging neckline that would have looked stunning if I didn't know she'd bought it to impress another man. The gala was held at the Riverside Convention Center, a sprawling complex overlooking the Penobscot River. The main ballroom was decorated with white linens and gold accents, with round tables surrounding a small stage where the evening's presentations would take place. Elise clung to my arm as we entered, but I could feel the tension in her grip. Her eyes scanned the room constantly, probably looking for Dorsey. "Mr. and Mrs. Grady." Dr. Landon, the hospital chief, approached with a warm smile. "So good to see you both. Elise, that dress is stunning." "Thank you, Dr. Landon. You remember my husband, Tom?" "Of course. High school English, right? My daughter had you for AP Literature 2 years ago, said you were tough but fair." We made small talk for a few minutes before Dr. Landon excused himself. As soon as he was gone, Elise's facade cracked slightly. "I need to use the restroom," she whispered. "I'll come with you." "That's not necessary." "I insist. Wouldn't want you to feel faint." She disappeared into the ladies' room while I waited outside, watching the crowd. Doctors, nurses, administrators, and their spouses mingled with practiced social grace. I recognized several faces from Molly's descriptions. The gossip network was out in full force tonight. When Elise emerged, her face was flushed. "Tom, I really think we should leave. But we haven't eaten yet, and I believe there's going to be a presentation." As if on cue, the lights dimmed, and Dr. Landon took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our annual charity gala. Before dinner, we have a special presentation celebrating some of our outstanding staff members." I felt Elise tense beside me as the large screen behind the stage lit up. Adam had done excellent work. The slideshow began with generic hospital photos and staff appreciation messages. "Tonight, we'd like to recognize the dedication of our Human Resources Department, led by the tireless efforts of Elise Grady." Elise's professional headshot appeared on screen to polite applause. She managed a weak smile and a small wave. "Mrs. Grady has shown exceptional commitment to staff relations and interdepartmental cooperation." The next slide should have been another generic photo. Instead, it was a security camera image of Elise and Dr. Dorsey in the parking garage, standing very close together beside his Tesla. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Elise's hand flew to her throat. Her collaborative approach with our medical staff has been particularly noteworthy. Another parking garage photo, this one showing them getting into his car together. The murmur became a buzz. People were turning in their seats, looking at our table. Elise was gripping my arm so tightly I was losing circulation. And her dedication to after-hours projects has been truly inspiring. The final image was a timestamp from the Marriott security system, showing Elise and Dorsey entering the hotel together. The ballroom erupted. Conversations exploded at every table as people processed what they'd just seen. Dr. Landon stood frozen on stage, clearly not understanding what had gone wrong with the presentation. "Tom," Elise whispered urgently, "we need to leave. Now." "But honey," I said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "you're being honored. We can't leave during your tribute." Across the room, I spotted Dr. Dorsey standing near the bar, his face pale as moonlight. He was staring at the screen like a man watching his career evaporate in real time. Tasha appeared at our table, her face a mask of concern. "Elise, are you okay? This is obviously some kind of technical malfunction." "Obviously," I agreed, though the timestamps seem remarkably accurate. Dr. Landon had regained his composure and was trying to move on to the next presentation, but the damage was done. The hospital's entire social hierarchy had just watched Elise's affair play out in high definition. "I'm going to be sick," Elise announced, standing abruptly. "Shall I call Dr. Dorsey?" I asked innocently. "He might be able to help with your condition." The woman at the next table actually gasped. Elise fled toward the exit, leaving me alone at our table with 2 untouched dinner plates and a room full of people who would be talking about this for years. I finished my salmon and asparagus at a leisurely pace, nodding politely to the other guests who kept glancing in my direction. When the dessert course arrived, I finally stood to leave. "Excuse me," I said to our table mates. "I should probably go check on my wife. She's been under a lot of stress lately with her special projects." I found Elise in the parking lot, crying in the front seat of our car. She looked up when I opened the driver's door, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "How could you do this to me?" she sobbed. "Do what? I didn't make those photos, Elise. I just made sure people could see them." "You've ruined everything. My career, my reputation." "No," I said, starting the engine. "You ruined those things. I just provided the documentation." As we drove home in silence, I felt a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in months. The joint account was empty, the affair was public knowledge, and Elise's carefully constructed world was crumbling. But this was only the beginning. Tomorrow, the real consequences would start. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of silence that follows explosions. Elise hadn't spoken to me since the gala, spending most of Saturday locked in our bedroom making hushed phone calls. I could hear her crying between conversations, probably with Tasha and her mother, trying to figure out how to salvage the wreckage of her reputation. I made coffee and read the Sunday paper like nothing had happened. The sports section was particularly interesting. The Red Sox had won their series and life was good. At 9:30, my phone rang. Molly's name appeared on the screen. "Tom, you magnificent bastard, what did you do?" "I have no idea what you mean. The entire hospital is buzzing about last night. Security footage of Elise and Dorsey, at the charity gala, in front of Dr. Landon and half the medical staff. Technical difficulties happen. My ass they do. Tom, Dorsey didn't even show up for his shift this morning. Word is that Dr. Landon called an emergency meeting with HR about inappropriate workplace relationships." I sipped my coffee and smiled. How unfortunate. There's more. Dorsey's wife, Marnie, showed up at the hospital an hour ago. She was asking questions about her husband's schedule and whether anyone knew about his extracurricular activities. I think someone sent her the photos too. The truth has a way of spreading. After I hung up, I found Elise in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, staring at her phone like it might explode. "Rough morning?" I asked. "Tasha says people are already posting about last night on social media. Someone recorded the slideshow with their phone. Technology is amazing these days. Tom, we need to talk." "I'm listening." She took a shaky breath. "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but this public humiliation isn't helping anyone." "I disagree. I think it's helping quite a lot of people understand what's been going on." "What do you want from me?" "I want my money back, all of it, and I want the truth about what you and Dorsey were really planning." Her face went pale. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do. The questions about my mental health, the fake investment story, the timeline you needed to accelerate. What were you two cooking up?" She stared at me for a long moment, probably calculating whether honesty or continued lies would serve her better. "We were going to file for divorce," she admitted finally. "Ryan thought it would be cleaner if we had evidence that you were unstable." "What kind of evidence?" "Nothing serious. Just documentation that you'd been acting erratically, maybe drinking too much, showing signs of depression or anger issues." "And then what?" "Then I'd file for divorce citing irreconcilable differences and concern for my safety. The judge would be more likely to award me the house and primary custody of Ben if there were questions about your stability." I set down my coffee cup very carefully. "You were going to fake evidence that I was dangerous." "Not dangerous, just unstable." "And Ben? You were going to use our son as a weapon in this scheme?" "It wasn't a scheme, Tom. It was just practical." The word practical hung in the air between us like a blade. My wife had been planning to destroy my reputation, steal my money, and take my son, all for the sake of practicality. "Where's Ben now?" I asked. "Upstairs. He doesn't know anything about this." "Good. Keep it that way until I decide how to handle this." I left Elise in the kitchen and went upstairs to check on our 13-year-old son. Ben was in his room, playing video games with the focused intensity that only teenagers can achieve. "Hey, Dad. Mom's been crying a lot. Is everything okay? We're working through some problems, buddy. Nothing for you to worry about." "Is it about the hospital thing? Jimmy's mom was at that party last night. She said something happened with Mom's presentation." I sat on the edge of his bed. "What did she say?" "Just that there was some kind of technical problem with the slideshow. Made it sound like Mom was embarrassed." "Your mom made some poor choices, Ben. But that's between her and me. You don't need to get involved in adult problems." He nodded, but I could see the worry in his eyes. Kids always know more than parents think they do. Monday morning brought the consequences I'd been waiting for. Elise left for work early, probably hoping to beat the gossip mill, but she was back home by 10:30 with red eyes and a termination letter. "They suspended me pending investigation," she announced, throwing her purse on the counter. "Violation of workplace conduct policies." "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. You planned this." "I didn't plan anything. I just made sure people could see what was already happening." My phone buzzed with a text from Adam. "Dr. Dorsey officially suspended. Parking lot incident this morning with his wife. Thought you should know." "What kind of parking lot incident?" I texted back. "Mrs. Dorsey threw coffee at him in front of everyone. Someone filmed it. Want me to send the video?" "Please." The video was even better than I'd hoped. Marnie Dorsey, a petite woman with the fury of a hurricane, had confronted her husband in the hospital parking lot with a venti latte and some choice words about his HR benefits. The coffee throw was perfectly executed, right in his face, followed by her walking away while he stood there dripping and humiliated. I showed the video to Elise. "Looks like Dr. Dorsey is having a rough day, too." She watched in silence, then started crying again. "This is all falling apart." "Yes, it is." That afternoon, while Elise was upstairs having another breakdown, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Grady, this is Klein, and Associates. I represent your wife in a legal matter." "What kind of legal matter?" "Mrs. Grady would like to discuss terms for an amicable separation. Given the recent complications, she feels it would be best to handle this quietly and quickly." "I'm sure she does. What's she offering?" "She's prepared to be very reasonable about asset division and custody arrangements." "How generous. What does reasonable mean exactly?" 50-50 split of marital assets, joint custody of your son, and no alimony claims from either party." I almost laughed. After stealing $57,000 and planning to frame me as mentally unstable, Elise was now offering to split things evenly. "I'll need to think about it," I told the lawyer. "Of course, but I should mention that Mrs. Grady is also prepared to file a restraining order if she feels threatened in any way." There it was, the final card in their deck. If I didn't play along, they'd paint me as the dangerous husband who needed to be legally restrained. "That's interesting," I said, "because I was just thinking about filing some legal papers myself." "What kind of papers?" "Oh, nothing dramatic. Just documentation of financial fraud, adultery, and conspiracy to file false police reports. You know, the usual marital paperwork." The line went quiet for a moment. "Mr. Grady, I think there may be some misunderstanding about the situation." "No misunderstanding at all. Your client stole money from our joint account, conducted an affair with a co-worker, and planned to frame me for domestic instability to gain advantage in divorce proceedings. I have documentation for all of it." I'll need to discuss this with my client." "You do that, and tell Mrs. Grady that if she wants to play legal games, I'm ready to play. but she might not like the rules. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about endgames and final moves. Elise and Dorsey had underestimated me from the beginning, assuming that a high school English teacher couldn't match their sophistication and planning. They were about to learn that 15 years of dealing with teenage schemes had prepared me for exactly this kind of battle. The real war was just beginning. Tuesday morning brought the kind of chaos that makes small towns legendary. I was grading papers at my kitchen table when I heard shouting from the street. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Brewster, our 70-year-old neighbor, standing in her driveway with her phone pointed at something I couldn't see. The something turned out to be Dr. Ryan Dorsey, stumbling around my front yard in wrinkled clothes and what appeared to be a state of complete mental breakdown. "Grady!" he yelled at my house. "Get out here! We need to talk!" I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. "Good morning, Dr. Dorsey. You're looking well." He was not looking well. His hair was disheveled, his shirt was untucked, and he had the wild-eyed appearance of a man who'd spent the night drinking and plotting revenge. "You think you're clever, don't you? Ruining my career, destroying my marriage." "I didn't ruin anything. I just provided some clarity about your existing situation." "Where's Elise? I know she's in there." "My wife is not available for meetings right now. Perhaps you could schedule something through your lawyer." Mrs. Brewster was now live-streaming the encounter on her phone, providing running commentary for her social media followers. "That's Dr. Dorsey from the hospital," she was saying. "He's the one who was carrying on with Mrs. Grady. This is better than my soap operas." Other neighbors were emerging from their houses, drawn by the commotion. The Hendersons from across the street, the young couple with the twin babies from next door, even cranky Mr. Peterson, who never spoke to anyone. They were all gathering to watch the show. "Dorsey," I said calmly, "you're making a scene. Maybe you should go home and sleep this off." "I'm not going anywhere until you fix this mess." "What mess? The mess where you seduced my wife, helped her steal my money, and planned to frame me for domestic instability?" A collective gasp arose from the assembled neighbors. Mrs. Brewster's phone was capturing everything for posterity. "That's not... We didn't..." Dorsey seemed to realize that his public confession wasn't going according to plan. "Didn't what? Didn't conduct an affair in hospital supply closets? Didn't meet at the Marriott 3 times a week? Didn't help my wife transfer $57,000 out of our joint account?" The neighbors were eating this up. Mrs. Henderson had her own phone out now, recording from a different angle. The twin babies were crying, but she ignored them in favor of the drama unfolding in my front yard. "You have no proof of any financial impropriety," Dorsey said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Actually, I have quite a lot of proof. Bank records, security footage, witness statements. Would you like me to share them with everyone here? This is harassment. I'm calling the police." "Please do. I'm sure they'd be very interested in your story." At that moment, Elise appeared in the doorway behind me. She looked horrified at the circus her lover had created in our front yard. "Ryan, what are you doing here?" "Tell him, Elise. Tell him to stop this campaign against us." "Ryan, you need to leave. Now." "I'm not leaving until he agrees to back off. My career is finished, my wife has filed for divorce, and I've got nothing left to lose." That last statement sent a chill through the crowd. A man with nothing to lose was a dangerous man, and everyone knew it. "Dr. Dorsey," I said firmly, "you need to leave my property immediately. Make me." I looked at this man who had helped destroy my marriage and tried to frame me as unstable, standing in my yard making threats in front of half the neighborhood. The irony was perfect. "I don't need to make you do anything," I said. "You're doing it yourself." I walked to the side of my house and turned on the garden hose. The water pressure in our neighborhood was excellent. City water, high volume, perfect for washing cars or humiliating cheating doctors. Dorsey saw me coming and tried to run, but his coordination was impaired by whatever he'd been drinking. I caught him right in the middle of my front lawn and soaked him thoroughly, from his disheveled hair to his expensive shoes. The neighbors cheered. Mrs. Brewster was laughing so hard she could barely hold her phone steady. Even Mr. Peterson was smiling. "You're insane!" Dorsey sputtered, water streaming down his face. "No," I said, still holding the hose. "I'm a high school teacher who's tired of dealing with overgrown children." Dorsey tried to charge at me, slipped on the wet grass, and fell face first into my wife's prize-winning rose bushes. He emerged covered in mud and thorns, looking like he'd lost a fight with nature itself. "That's assault," he yelled. "That's gardening," I replied. "You fell into my landscaping." At that moment, a police car pulled up. Officer Martinez stepped out, surveyed the scene, the soaked and muddy doctor, the neighbors with their phones, the man with the garden hose, and sighed deeply. "What seems to be the problem here?" "This man is trespassing on my property and making threats," I said calmly. "He assaulted me with a hose," Dorsey protested. Officer Martinez looked at Dorsey's condition, then at the garden hose in my hands, then at Mrs. Brewster's phone, which was still recording everything. "Sir, are you injured?" "I'm soaked and humiliated." "But not injured?" "Well, no." "Mr. Grady, did you spray this man with your hose?" "I was watering my lawn, officer. Dr. Dorsey chose to stand in the spray pattern." Mrs. Brewster called out from her driveway. "Officer Martinez, I got the whole thing on video. That doctor came here drunk and started making threats. Mr. Grady was just defending his property." "Is that right, Mrs. Brewster?" "Absolutely. And I live-streamed the whole thing, so there's plenty of evidence." Officer Martinez turned back to Dorsey. "Dr. Dorsey, I'm going to need you to leave this property immediately. If you come back, you'll be arrested for trespassing." "But he—" "Now, sir." Dorsey looked around at the crowd of neighbors, all of whom were staring at him with expressions ranging from amusement to disgust. His grand gesture of confrontation had turned into a public humiliation that would be talked about for years. He walked to his Tesla, leaving muddy footprints and rose thorns in his wake. As he drove away, the neighbors began to disperse, chattering excitedly about the morning's entertainment. Mrs. Brewster approached me with a huge grin. "Tom, that was the most excitement we've had in this neighborhood since the Hendersons' cat got stuck in the storm drain." "Just trying to keep my garden properly watered, Mrs. Brewster." "Well, you certainly gave that doctor a thorough watering. My video's already got 50 likes and I just posted it 5 minutes ago." After everyone left, I found Elise sitting at our kitchen table, staring at her hands. "That was the final straw," she said quietly. "For who?" "For everyone. My career is over, my reputation is destroyed, and now Ryan's completely lost his mind." "What did you expect would happen, Elise?" "I expected we could handle this like adults." "Adults don't steal money and frame their spouses for mental instability." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far, and now you have to live with the consequences. What happens now? Now you return my money, sign whatever divorce papers my lawyer draws up, and hope I don't decide to press charges for fraud and conspiracy. And if I don't?" I smiled and coiled up the garden hose. "Then Mrs. Brewster's video goes viral, and you become famous for all the wrong reasons." Elise stared at me for a long moment, probably realizing that her careful plans had not just failed, they'd backfired spectacularly. She'd wanted to paint me as the unstable spouse, but instead, she and Dorsey had provided a public demonstration of their own instability. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours," she said finally. "Good choice." That afternoon, I received a call from Klein & Associates. The lawyer's tone was significantly different from our previous conversation. "Mr. Grady, my client would like to discuss a revised settlement offer." "I'm listening." "Full return of all transferred funds, plus she'll sign an uncontested divorce agreement with joint custody and no alimony claims." "And in return?" "You agree not to pursue criminal charges or further public embarrassment." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Deal." Excellent. I'll have the papers drawn up immediately. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and looked around at the house where I'd spent 8 years of marriage. Tomorrow, Elise would be gone, probably moving in with her mother until she could figure out her next move. Ben would split his time between us, which wasn't ideal, but was better than losing him entirely. My phone buzzed with a text from Molly. Just saw Mrs. Brewster's video. You magnificent bastard. You actually did it. I texted back, did what? You beat them at their own game. They tried to destroy you, and you flipped the whole thing back on them. She was right. Elise and Dorsey had underestimated the power of truth, public opinion, and a garden hose wielded with righteous fury. My joint account was empty, but it would be refilled. My marriage was over, but it had been over long before I admitted it. My reputation as a mild-mannered English teacher was probably shot, but I'd gained something better, the respect of people who understood that sometimes you have to fight back. I looked out my kitchen window at the rose bushes where Dr. Dorsey had made his final muddy stand. They'd need some attention after his impromptu landscaping, but they'd recover. Just like I would. The war was over, and I'd won. Not through violence or illegal schemes, but through patience, planning, and the simple power of letting people see the truth. Elise had wanted everything in her name. Now she could keep her nothing, and I could keep my dignity.